It's Super Tuesday, March 1st, 2016. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we're talking about Thebes, the reprint of Gensites von Theben.
Let's do this.
So remember how last week I was complaining about how I had to fly to Southern California for one meeting? Well, we're recording this show in advance because I'm in London right now. Literally for like 1 day of a convention, so I'll be back like.
Well, it's a convention and not a 1 hour meeting.
Yeah, it is a convention, so I got a whole day convention, and I had to have the days before and after the convention free to be able to go to meetings. I don't know if I'll have any meetings lined up, so I might just be fucking around in London. So if any of you are in London,
just don't line up meetings. Oops.
If any of you, well, I'd like to line up a few meetings because if those meetings turn into money, I can take some of that money. But if any of you are in London,
you get commissions on the.
I can, depending. I should ask for a commission. I've actually stood up our whole Australian business.
Right.
In fact, I get to go to Australia again in May probably, and then I'm probably going to make him pay for me to go to PAX Australia. So
that's not in May. It's in October.
I'm getting 2 Australia trips this year, at least. Anyway, so yeah, if any of you are in London and you're listening to this on Tuesday, I'm landing in London like right about now, your time. And yeah, maybe we can hang out, especially on like Wednesday during the day. I'll meet you in a pub and drink a beer and such. So, gaming news.
Yeah, so the biggest, deal right now, I guess, and really the only gaming news recently is the Street Fighter V came out. Woo!
Now, it's interesting because I don't know if I remember a time when, like, if I tweeted about things that weren't anime, like, certain people would be like, why are you talking about this other shit? Just in like Anna Twitter and our general. But now, like, everyone in my Twitter feed always talks about the same thing, or at least a lot of them do. So Street Fighter was the focus of like half my Twitter a few days ago.
All right, so if you weren't paying attention, Street Fighter V came out. I've been seeing it at PAX for quite a while and other conventions and whatnot. So it's Street Fighter. If you know Street Fighter, this is it. It's just a new one with more.
I can do a Hadoken.
More characters, upgraded graphics, that sort of thing. One big change they did that I actually think is a positive change is they increased the buffer window, and they sort of they did a bunch of stuff, and basically all that you care about is that it makes it easier to do special moves. You can be less accurate, and you will still execute your special move and your combo as if you had been very accurate with and precise with your button pressing.
I do like that change because I don't think there are that many people in the world who will excel beyond that to the point that it matters. And I feel like
in Street Fighter 4, pro players, and really, not necessarily the top of the pros who might have been so good they didn't need to do this.
Yep.
But extremely good players would like double tap because Street Fighter 4 required you to be so precise. They'd like hit it twice to make sure they got it.
But I'm saying this will broaden the top tier a little bit, and I think it'll be a net positive for the game.
Maybe. So the problems with Street Fighter V is that this release, basically, they weren't done with the game and they put it out anyway. Right? It's the only things really in this release are multiplayer, of just play online, and they did improve the netcode. It's like the best fighting game netcode that's ever existed, as far as I know.
All right.
There's a story mode, but the story mode isn't even the story mode you're used to in Street Fighter. They didn't even include that, which is, you pick a character, you fight every single character until you beat the boss. You
get a couple of cutscenes along the way, and then...
Well, there's usually no cutscenes until the very end when you win, right? I mean, at least in Street Fighter 2, but
yeah.
There's basically story mode is like, you fight like a few guys. It's like a really crappy story mode with like almost nothing in it. It's like garbage. And like there's no training. There's like nothing in the game. They just didn't finish any of those things. And they're like, yeah, we'll patch it later. We'll patch it later. It's like, why did you release it undone like this?
They released it undone for the fighting game community, like the pro players and the people who care about fighting games, and shorten it to FG and all that.
But that's not a large number of people. You're going to sell it to them. And meanwhile, it's like no one's going to go back and like re-review the game and update the review once you make the updates.
I wonder.
It's not good in its current state, and it's going to have a reputation for being bad forever because the initial release was bad.
I don't know if that'll actually
and
be
it's
much
going
of
to
a
be
concern.
very, very hard now for non-pro players to become pro, because usually...
Yeah, because that training mode in Street Fighter 4 was so fucking useful.
It wasn't useful, but it's better than nothing, right? But here's the thing. Even if, you have a game where it's really hard, so it's, like Street Fighter 4, let's say, at least the game is complete from the get-go, So everyone can start at the beginning, even though some people might have a head start from previous Street Fighters, but pretend it's a brand new fighting game, right? That doesn't have a legacy. Everyone can start learning from the same, level at the same time. This is a game where at release, only pros can play it. It's only playable by pros. So now you gave all the pros a head start. All the pros are already learning Street Fighter V. The people who might possibly become pros of Street Fighter V. That kid who's just now become old enough to play a fighting game and understand it. And will practice enough in his life or her life to become a Street Fighter master. They can't play this because it's the floor. We're not talking about the ceiling. We're talking about the floor to even play the game is too high.
Well, they could just play Street Fighter 4, raise themselves, and then play 5.
I think the transition is it's pretty significantly different. You could do that, but I don't know.
How do you think the pros do it? They had to do that transition.
I'm just saying,
they don't
Street Fighter 5 has got
mode.
a lot of issues right now, and it's making a big fuss in the fighting game community.
Now, Scott,
the fighting game community loves to talk big. This is the thing I've taken out of this, hubbub that's happened around the release of this game, right? Is the fighting game community likes to talk big about how such a good community it is, and except for, right, and all the positive aspects of the fighting community, which many of them do exist, right? There's also a lot of negative aspects in the fighting game community, but
yes, there are.
But they have, many people in the fighting game community or fighting communities have, pointed that out as also being bad and that they don't like it, right?
Yep.
However, we're talking about behavior and harassment and such, right? That sort of thing.
I think fighting games might be, of all the game subgenres, I think fighting games probably actually have the worst culture.
Maybe. But the one thing I realized is that, even though, we can put a lot of blame on the people who make fighting games for making them hard to learn. And we've discussed this in the past, right? Where everything's a secret. Go listen to when we talked about Street Fighter 4 years ago.
Yeah. Counter-Strike doesn't have any way for you to double shoot if you time it just right.
But the fighting game community, if you want to talk big about how great you are, make some tutorials that actually teach people how to play your fucking games. Because you know what? I went online looking. Can I even find a fan-made tutorial that teaches the basics of Street Fighter?
Now, you might already be saying, but Scott, the manual tells me to do a Hadouken, I go down, and right, and I hit punch.
Sure.
That tells me all the secret moves.
And that's what almost all the tutorials will tell you, is to press down, right, and then punch, right? And it shows you these 4 icons. That doesn't teach you jack shit. Can I press down, then move the joystick to the middle, then to the down right, then back to the middle, then to the right, then back to the middle, then press a punch button? Fuck no, you can't. You can't do that shit, right? Okay, I have to push down, then I swing it to the right in an arc.
All right, no, that's fine.
That's fine. How fast do I have to swing it in an arc? Can I swing it slowly through that arc, like tick, tick, tick? Or do I have to go tick, tick, tick? How fast do I have to do it exactly?
No, maybe.
How fast?
Maybe it doesn't even matter. But the problem is, even if all that stuff
when
is sort
exactly do I press the punch button?
See,
do I press the punch button at the same time as the stick reaches the right-hand position? Do I push it after it reaches the right-hand position? How long do I have to wait before? Which punch button can I push? Right? And no one teaches you any of that shit. I actually found one tutorial where the guy actually did show you, his joystick was like a little tiny thing. You could actually see the joystick in the bottom right corner. And while he wasn't showing it well, he was at least showing it. And he did teach how to do the Hadouken better than I've seen anyone teach it. He then went on to the Shoryuken and didn't teach jack shit.
Yep.
Right? He's just like, he's just like, yeah, Shoryuken, same as Hadouken. It's right, then down, forward.
Fighting
it's
games could be designed differently to where that minutia wouldn't matter.
Sure.
But the fact is, with Street Fighter specifically, that minutia, that frame timing, is the entire game.
I don't even know the answer to this question, right? And I've been playing Street Fighter since it was only Street Fighter 2 in the arcade, not even Championship Edition, right? If you want to do a Shoryuken, you have to go right, then down forward, then punch, right? I know that you can press punch pretty much very soon after you press down forward. I know that. I was just asking it rhetorically before, right?
Yeah. I can do it reliably.
I can do it mostly reliably, right? But here's the question I don't know. So you press right, then when you're moving the stick from the right position to the down position, are you allowed to pass through the down right position on your way there?
I don't think I do.
Are you allowed to pass through? Because, the joystick only has 3 ways to go, right? It can go to the neutral position and then down. it can go to the down right position and then to the down position. Or you could sort of sneak between the two at like an angle, right? If it's a square box joystick hole, you can sort of go at an angle from right to down, just sort of sneak between neutral and down right.
I think I bring it back, and then I go down, and then I swing it.
Right, but it's like, are you allowed? I mean, like, even if I experiment with those three, which I have done for a considerable amount of time, sometimes the Shoryuken comes out, and sometimes it doesn't, and I can't really prove, conclusively which of those three paths you're allowed to take.
Now again,
right, in order to execute the Shoryuken, and nobody, not one tutorial on the internet will tell me a definitive answer.
Now, these things could be
if I had to teach my mom
design.
how to do a Shoryuken, or teach one of my friends who's never played a fighting game in their lives, but happens to be a smart person who's a nerd, how to do a Shoryuken, what the fuck do I tell them?
Now, the thing is,
I don't even know.
As a kid, Scott, even without any of that, I was able to do all those moves most of the time reliably.
But I got to do them 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's the problem I'm getting at, is that because the games rely on that really fiddliness to be the competitive scene above even like baby's first level, it makes it to where the community has a vested interest in not making it all super clear, because it adds this artificial barrier to entry that makes their skills that much more special.
Yep. I'm going to talk about even one more example just because this bothers me so much, right? So M. Bison is my guy, right? Well, dictator, because he's not M. Bison in other countries.
Psycho
right?
Crusher, Psycho Crusher,
Right.
Psycho Crusher.
So I know how to do a charge move. I hold back for a little while, and then I press forward and then punch, right? Whoosh. Should I do my Psycho Crusher or my Scissor Kick? I can even do the jumping one. I can do these moves relatively reliably, right? Here's something I don't actually know, right? So you have to charge down, which means you have to hold the stick down for, I assume it's like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I always remember
I
it being 2
usually just
seconds.
sort of feel it, but I'm pretty sure it's 2 seconds on the clock in the game, right? The clock in the middle of the screen there. So here's a question. If I jump in the air, and while I'm in the air, just in a regular jump, I tap up. If I tap up and then immediately hold down, but I'm still in this jumping animation, I haven't hit the ground yet, right? And maybe I go up then down right away, like really quick. So I'm holding down, even though I'm only in the up motion of the jump. By the time I hit the ground, I've already held the stick down for like a second and a half.
So I was about to say, I think
Can I immediately press up and kick to do the head stomp right out of that?
I was
or
about to say,
did the charging not count because I wasn't on the ground?
I was about to say, I think it counts, but I realized here's a panel you could do. I don't want to run it because we don't even know anyone qualified to do it.
Yep.
So what you do is you have a panel of Street Fighter champion guys, like 10 of them, and you ask them questions like that, and they have to write their answer on a whiteboard, match game style, and then they all reveal, and then we have the super pro who's running the panel do the motion and see what happens in a very defined manner, maybe tool assisted. So it would be very interesting to see a panel of 10 Street Fighter champions if they agree on the answers to all those kinds of questions, because I suspect...
Right, and it's like, okay, so I want to do a Psycho Crusher. You hold back for 2 seconds, then forward and punch, right? What if I hold back and up, and I do a back away jump, and I'm back, but I'm also holding back up, right? And then I sort of transition into holding back as I go towards the ground. Can I unleash the Psycho Crusher when I land from the backwards jump? Am I allowed to do that?
Now, this is all in sort of stark light to the experience we had at MagFest, because I played a bunch of the Fist of the North Star fighting game, which I mentioned this, and Daryl Surratt pointed out that the game actually has infinicombos.
Nice.
Like, it's completely broken.
Nice.
But none of us had ever played it before.
Nope.
And most of the people at the con had maybe played it at the previous MagFest at best.
Maybe.
So...
I didn't see, I'm sure someone at the con was pro at it. I didn't see any such person.
So when I played it with our friends, and I played it a bunch, and I played it with just strangers, like I did the old arcade pickup game stuff, it was real fun.
Fighting games are hella fun if everyone is at the same skill level, which is why pros at fighting games have hella fun, because the people they're fighting against are also pros.
But I guess the difference is with a lot of other games, like especially a lot of board games, but also a lot of like competitive video games, you sort of, once you hit the level of master, there usually isn't a pro circuit. So then you and your friends all just give up on the game.
There's no magical drop pro circuit.
Yeah, you move on to a different game.
Yep.
But with fighting games, you pretty much get into that tier and live that life forever.
Right, so the news is Street Fighter V is out, pros only. What's your news?
I don't think it affects their sales at all, and I think that Street Fighter basically caters to and relies on the fighting game community and doesn't give a shit about the casual anymore.
Also, it's even more pervy than the previous Street Fighter,
Someone-
yet still not in Dead or Alive territory.
Yeah. Also, I was reminded
But
that...
there's like a new character whose butt's just hanging
You want to talk
out.
about story modes? Bushido Blade 2 had one hell of a story mode.
All right, do your news.
So, let me go back here to my link. Got a bunch of links about this. Fire Emblem Fates got released in the U.S.
Is that a 3DS Fire Emblem?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
One of our friends...
Considering that I was never able to finish any of the GBA or DS Fire Emblems, I am not going to buy or play this one.
I'm not going to either because I'm done with Fire Emblem games.
I'm also done.
I played the most recent one before this on the 3DS all the way through. And I got to admit, they're not that good as games.
I mean, when my Pegasus, who's way far away from everyone, just gets like one-shotted and then I have to restart the whole game.
Well, because the games are puzzles. They're very much, it's a puzzle, grind through it, or learn the magic sauce, or learn the perfect way. Like, it's not the kind of game it looks like it is.
Yeah, do the mission, figure out what it is, and do it again after you reset your system so you know what's coming.
But anyway, so the game came out in Japan, and it didn't come out in the US until some months later. So fan subbing groups fucking went apeshit trying to translate this game before Nintendo released it. And the reason they did this is because they were afraid of Nintendo censorship. Now, what they mean by censorship is that Nintendo of America removed one scene from the game that was pretty much just straight up homophobic. They covered up one bikini shot of, I'm pretty sure, an underage character. And
Japan, why you do these things in the first place?
they removed a game where you can use your finger to pet your characters.
I never saw any of these things in a previous Fire Emblem. What happened? It's like they made it worse. It was just a regular old fantasy thing. I didn't know any of this stuff was
But
in
the most egregious
any
sin,
Fire Emblem I've ever seen.
the most egregious sin that Nintendo of America apparently committed on this game is they did a real translation and localization instead of a weeaboo exact word my Nakama translation. So, welcome, video game people, to the world of animu weeaboo bullshit. Welcome to the fan subbers of America. This shit is amazing what people are mad about. They're mad that instead of doing a word-for-word, literal, terrible translation, they actually localized the game and made it funny. Because you know what? Fire Emblem games, not really well known for their writing. In fact, the writing kind of shit. And I think
Go listen to the interview we did with Oda King, and you'll hear everything you need to know about this topic.
Yes, I will
that
link
was
to
so
it.
many years ago. We lived in Beacon then. It was like more than like a zillion years ago.
So basically, the game came out, and all the fan subber people made the same arguments that the anime weeaboo fan subber people make about how, well, if you're not going to release the thing in its pure form, then I'm not going to buy it. Good luck selling in our market, you pieces of shit with your fake translations. And they were like, I'm boycotting the game. I'm going to play my pirated copy.
Okay.
And as far as I can tell, this game outsold any Fire Emblem game ever in North America already.
Well, it's not like they print that many copies. So usually, you know, I was really big into, you know, Nintendo portable games for a long time. And I still kind of am. It's just they haven't released the kind that I want to play recently. But it's like when they were the big thing, GBA, DS, you know, from Game Boy Color to DS, I was getting like all the hot games, like all the Phoenix Wrights and all, right? And those games, those really hot games that, you know, they wouldn't print a lot of copies, so they would be hard to get. You'd have to get them on release, pre-order them from Amazon or somewhere, and then they'd be out of print and they'd be worth a lot of money. So this is just another one of those where, like, it comes out and you got to get it because there aren't that many copies.
Oh my God, I saw another headline. The ass Nintendo doesn't want you to see. Cool it, kids.
The ass that they shouldn't have had in Japan probably to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, if you really care that much, I mean, this is the speech I would give to the weebs. But I guess now weebs are infiltrating gaming. If you care that much about a pure translation, maybe you should learn Japanese.
I was about to say, this is yet another example of
my Nakama.
Of Scott's peeve, which is, oh, look, there's a person who is doing a large amount of labor, so much labor, to avoid learning something. It would be less work to learn Japanese than to simply, you know, than to translate this game. But because people hate learning so much, they would rather do the extra labor of translating this whole fucking thing than just learning a new language.
And
which, while
the fan
not
translation
easy, is easier than translating this game.
The fan translation as far as I can tell, is terrible. It has like no.
Do we have
life.
any? Do we have even one example of comparing the real translation to the fan translation?
I have a few, but they're not really illustrative enough of the point.
All right.
But apparently, there's one scene where two assassins have this really sort of typical anime discussion about I'm such a badass. No, I'm such a badass.
I didn't show my full power.
And it's kind of this conversation here. So the localizers took it as a joke. And for that one conversation, because it's these two badass loner serial killer assassins, it just had them have this long conversation that's dot, 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 dot.
It sounds like they didn't want to translate it and just put dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, but I read the conversation. There's not much going on in there.
I mean, it would be funny if it was a Golgo 13 reference.
But all the examples I can find are basically just the Nintendo of America translation is it reads like something someone would say in a movie, and the fan translation is here's a bunch of Japanese verbs and nouns translated directly so they don't make a lot of sense in the order that they're not presented.
Nakama Sword-san.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the meta moment, we're going to be at PAX East performing on Sunday at I believe 3 or 3:30 p.m. Atari Game Design. We did this at PAX South, and people lined up like way in advance. Like the room was completely filled. I think it's one of our best new panels.
I don't think it's that good a panel, but it's what they accepted.
People
so
really liked it, even though I would rather be doing designing game rules because I feel like that'll actually have more impact on games that I play down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got video of that one, so from PAX South, so I'll probably get the video of that up this weekend. Otherwise, other conventions are coming up. Mocha's coming up, so remember to come to New York and go to that. Emily will have a table at Mocha, so stay tuned for that business.
Okay.
And I guess it's time to talk about a game, because we played a bunch of games.
What about things of the day?
Oh, yeah, you want to do things of the day?
Yeah.
We'll do those next now. Here.
So this is not related to gaming in any way, unless you want to talk about some Sesame Street games. Like I had one for the NES that was okay. And it's actually kind of creepy. But yeah, so here's a recipe for a baked good known as Cookie Monster Bark. It is basically one big sheet cookie that looks like Cookie Monster.
Oh, that kind of bark.
Because you put blue frosting on it, and then you put Candy Googly's eyes on it, and then you put, cookies in it, and it looks like Cookie Monster, and then you break it up into pieces of bark, and then you eat it. So I'm going to bake this weekend, and Rim's going to leave town, and then I'm going to eat it when he's not here.
Emily, steal some for me. Oh, no. So, my thing of the day. So remember way back, we did that Bad Games lecture at a bunch of PAXs, and we did it all over the place. Like, it's a fun lecture to do. But there's one section of it where we basically shit all over race walking for being bullshit.
Race walking is bullshit.
Yep. So I pulled that part out and put it as its own YouTube video. And basically, I pretty regularly see the comments people write on it, like, stop embarrassing yourself. Like, race walkers really butter about this video, because if you search for race walking on YouTube, on the front page, 2 of the videos are people talking about how stupid race walking is. Us and that SciShow that's like, yeah, everyone cheats.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reminded, because this keeps coming up, and I wanted to give a video to someone who was complaining about us. And it was that old thing of the day we did in like 2006. Samurai are coming. Will he run?
I don't remember this.
It was your thing of the day. You don't remember anything.
That's why it was so good.
So when I found the old episode,
you can't even beat my things of the day. You got to take my own thing of the day from the past and bring it back.
It might have been my thing of the day. I don't actually remember, but I can go check. But I found the episode.
That was back in the days when I would use Japanese television for all my things of the day.
And of course, the link was super broken, because everything of the day link is broken.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to find this again. But here it is. This is a video. And because I put so much work into finding it again, I want you to all see it. This is a professional Olympic race walker who apparently does not actually know much about Japan, because he's not American. Like I think he's Italian or something. But basically, he does not know much about Japan. So this is, even by Japanese prank standards, pretty elaborate. They put fake news on TVs in all the restaurants, in his hotel, everywhere he was, talking about how there's been a samurai uprising. So he's had this like background of like news commentators and video, like all these people being murdered by samurai. Like there's a big samurai uprising all over Japan. Like, will the emperor fall? Like all this nonsense. and it was on the news for him constantly. And then,
I mean, what year was this?
like recently, like early 2000s.
I mean, if you saw that on the news, I think it was a fake news. I wouldn't think it was real news.
Well, it was all in the background. It'd be like normal news, and then there'd be like this one thing just like planted in the news.
There's no way a smart person believes that.
So we didn't think about it too much, I assume. But then the event was they ostensibly had flown him out to Japan to try to beat a race walking world record in an empty stadium.
Was this guy a race walking record holder?
He is a professional race walker of some kind.
Okay.
And they had him doing his race walking. And then they had a bunch of people dressed up as samurai bust in, and they had a bunch of blood squibs and everything. So as he's running by, like, there's this kind of commotion, and he sees this guy dressed up as samurai, like, yelling at some cops and things. And then the samurai murder these dudes, and he's still race walking. And then the samurai, like, go, oh, and they point, and then they start running after him. And the whole point of this is a bunch of people watching this on monitors, betting on whether or not he will run or walk away. Will he race walk away, or will he give up and run? Is running
It pretty much comes down to if he believes it's fake, he's just going to keep doing his race walk.
But then they come after him.
If he doesn't believe it's fake, he's just going to run because he doesn't care about the race walk anymore.
So when they come after him, he starts to race walk a little bit, and then, spoilers, he runs.
I mean, technically he was running the whole time.
Well, yeah. So, Thebin.
Yeah, so here's a game, and I did a little bit of research on this game. So it was printed a long time ago. What year?
2004.
That's a long time ago, and it was called...
The box art looks like it's like an early 90s game, though. I mean, look at that box.
Yeah, it looks like an even older game. But the game was called GeekNights Fun Thebin. Does GeekNights mean archaeologists or something like that?
Archaeological sites? I don't know.
Yeah, something like that.
An archaeological von Peter Prinz.
Right. So anyway... So
for 2 to 4 Spieler.
So the game was reprinted in a much better version in what year?
For ages 10 and up. I'm trying to read those old German rules.
Yeah, we don't care about that.
It was reprinted in 2007 as just Thebes.
So I think it's hard to get and out of print, maybe, but maybe it's not hard to get. I don't know, but we were able to, we had a friend had a copy. We played it a bunch. It's a game I had seen around before at conventions and in game libraries and never had actually played. So we played it. We played it like 2 or 3 times.
Well, Scott played it, and then he comes over to me later because I was doing something else. He's like, oh my God, we got to play this digging game. And he kept bringing it up. And then, like, the next day, I played the digging game, and we dug.
So the thing about this game is that it's just so thematically good, right? The theme of the game is this. You are an archaeologist, like Indiana Jones style.
Fake archaeologist.
Except without the traps and the golden monkeys and
shit. The
shit.
little dudes you move around have Indiana Jones. They're just Indiana Jones.
Right. So you start in Europe, and you're going around Europe researching things, right?
And chasing down rumors and
right, or you're hiring diggers or getting graduate students to to follow you around. And
maybe you're buying a blimp to keep on hand, or you buy a car, which apparently is super awesome.
Yeah, which we didn't think was awesome. Anyway,
you didn't think was awesome.
Well, I was told it was not awesome. So
yeah, we'll talk about this later, but we started the game, and Scott's
I trusted someone.
The car comes up, and Scott's like, oh, the car sucks. And I'm like, well,
I was told the car sucked, but apparently that was not the case.
The car would probably be pretty great if I bought it in the beginning of the game, and then a car appears, and of course our friend buys it right away.
I was also told the shovel was awesome, so I got a bunch of shovels right away. Not that awesome.
Yeah, shovel was awesome, but you know what? I only got 2 shovels. I
got 3, and it still wasn't awesome enough. Anyway, so here's how the game works. You spend time. The game, depending on how many players you have, is 2 or 3 years long. And everything you do takes time. So you move along the edge of the board whenever you do anything.
Like where the victory point track is on regular German games. Instead, that's just time. So
yeah,
I do
weeks.
a thing.
There's 52 weeks in the year. So you move... if you do something that takes 6 weeks, it's like moving from Moscow to London and then doing some research could take you like 1 week per space you have to move, which could be like 3 spaces or 4 spaces. Moscow to London's pretty far.
Yep.
And then you spend time like learning about Mesopotamia. That takes 3 more weeks.
So like a car to be on a place.
So you move your guy 7 spaces because it took 7 weeks.
Yep. And so some cards, like if you do a bunch of research in Moscow, even after you move to Moscow, you'll spend like 6 weeks doing the research. But if you just find some schmuck with a rumor on the street, it only takes like 1 more week.
Right.
And you go until you run out of time.
So everyone is, whoever's turn it is the person who has currently spent the least number of weeks. So if you've spent the least amount of time, you spend a little bit of time. And if you pass someone, they now spend a little bit of time, and everyone does a move whenever they're currently the person who's done the least stuff.
Yep. So whoever's furthest back always takes their turn. So, if you're
sometimes
furthest
you
back,
can do stuff twice in a row. If you do a little bit and then a little bit and a little bit, and everyone else has already done a whole ton of crap, then you can actually do a bunch of different things while everyone else is waiting for you.
Now that in and of itself is a novel mechanic.
It's so thematic. It's like you're spending time going around doing stuff, and everyone has the same amount of time to do stuff as everyone else, because you can't end the game by going over or under. You end the game going exactly 2 or 3 years of stuff doing.
But also, as a mechanic, it is very novel because it provides
It solves the turn order problem.
It provides a lot of opportunities for a clever game designer.
There
using
isn't
a mechanic like
there
this
isn't something like, oh, you got to be the first player and I'm sitting to your left, and none of that
to design
happens.
a very well balanced or self-balancing game. Because sure, the shovel's awesome. Shovel takes a lot of time, so you could do like a big crazy move on your turn, but it might take a ton of weeks, and then everyone else takes like 3 or 4 turns before you get to go again.
Right. Now, the other thing you do is you can go down below, you can leave Europe. You can go to, well, Greece is still in Europe, but you can go to Greece, Crete, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Palestine. Is there somewhere else to go?
I forget.
Right. Rome is part of Europe. It's not part of the archaeology dig places. And you just go there the same way you go around Europe. But when you get there, there's only one thing to do, and that is start digging.
Now, the digging mechanic is
the best.
Now it's the best, but at the same time, it does make the game a little random. But it makes the game
a
really,
lot random.
But it makes it thematically really fun.
Right. This game is all about theme. It's not about being a strong competitive game. Right. So
I've already come up with some pretty strong strategies.
There's strong strategies, but in the end, it's the mercy of the desert. Right. So let's say you go to Egypt and you've studied Egypt a lot. You've studied 4 Egypts. Right. There's this little awesome wheel you use, and you spin the wheel, and the wheel says, "Oh, you've studied 4 Egypts. Well, if you dig in Egypt for 8 weeks, you get to dig this much dirt in Egypt. And the more you know about Egypt, or the more time you spend, the more you get to dig."
So the bag that you dig from for each site has its own bag.
You literally dig. There's an Egypt bag, and you reach your hand in there and pull out a number of tiles equal to how many you're allowed to dig, right? And you're digging through that bag, and in the bag, it starts the game with half treasure and half dirt. Any treasure you get is treasure you get, and it's worth victory points. Any dirt you get is dirt. Now, what makes the game amazing is that when you're done digging the Egypt bag, you take all the treasures and you keep them. You know, you want to hold an exhibition, or who knows what you're going to do with them. But all the dirt goes back in. You fill in the holes. And the next person who comes and digs in Egypt, it fucking sucks. Right? Because there's way more dirt than treasure in there now. They need to dig even better than you dug to have a chance of getting anything.
I once dug 12 tiles from a bag that had a reasonable amount of treasure in it and dug 12 dirt.
I've also saw some people dig like 6 tiles out of a bag that was mostly dirt and get like 5 treasures. So it's like there's so much drama when digging, but it's just like the drama of doing real archaeology, where you go to a site and you start digging. It's like, are we going to find anything? We don't fucking know. And then if you do find something, like, oh my God, it's a prize amphora completely intact, or oh my God, it's a whole sarcophagus that's plated in gold leaf. Holy shit.
So even further, to really drive the theme home, it's got all these other little elements. Like it has a sheet that tells you what all the treasures are.
Yeah, they're all real treasures, and they have like names and
There's
stuff.
no bearing on the game, but yet we would read like, oh, you just
Right.
found a blah
Right.
and a blah and the ancient menorah of blah, blah, blah.
Right. Now, that's the thing about the game, is that the theme of it is so good, but the mechanics are only okay.
Well, I would say the digging mechanic is what makes you say the mechanics are okay, because the rest of the game, I would like to make a more deterministic game that uses the same front half, everything
Right.
but the digging.
It's not just the digging that's random, it's also the cards that are random.
Well,
right?
it's a third in Taxis randomness or a web of
Exactly.
power randomness.
So let's say I go to London and I spend a turn researching Egypt, right? And then it goes around and I spent a lot of time doing that. Everyone else does a bunch of stuff. It's finally my turn again, right? Now there's 4 cards available. The only thing you can do in Europe is do one of those 4 cards pretty much. And I look at those 4 cards and they're all in Moscow. And even though I might want to do one of them, I'm in London. I just happen to be in London now.
So suck it up, spend some weeks and go over
So
there.
I end up having to spend a bunch of weeks. Meanwhile, so now I spend a bunch of weeks to go to Moscow to do this card. Then the card that gets flipped over next is, I don't know, Paris. Rim's already in Paris, and it's his turn now, and that card only, so he just picks up that card for a lot less weeks than it would have cost me and that ends up, it doesn't seem that big a deal, but if it keeps, and it might, over time, the whole course of the game, it should even out between the players.
It is also mitigated heavily by the fact that if you find a good card, it pushes you way up on the time track, so whoever fell behind will probably get to do a couple turns in a row and reveal more cards.
That's what I'm saying, is if a good card spawns on you, right, not only do you get that card without having to spend a lot of time, but now it's your turn again. You can get to do a lot more stuff in a lot less time if the cards turn up your way. And
well, that's the danger of taking cards and going ahead. If you take good cards and go ahead, you basically give everyone else more card opportunities.
You might not have no choice depending on what cards are available on your turn. So it's not just the digging that's random, it's which cards are there on your turn that is also almost as random as the tiles, but not quite as random.
Moving will only take like 1, 2, or 3 weeks. Good cards take 6. I think it's close to being very optimally balanced.
It's close, but it's not so perfect, right? I
was watching you make very poor decisions throughout that game.
No, I was doing fine. I mean, so yes, there is decisions to be made that matter a lot, but it is also it's like a half luck, half, skill game.
I think the digging adds 80% of the luck to the game. The luck of the card getting.
I'm just saying the luck of the card getting is not nearly as big as the digging luck. I
would go beyond that. I would say it's minor.
I'm saying it is not huge. It is not major, but it is large enough to be significant.
I wouldn't even say it's that significant. I would say it's barely significant.
I'd say it is significant.
It's a bigger deal in Thurn and Taxis and Web of Power.
It is a bigger deal in those, but it is still a deal. It's a deal. It's not a big deal.
Yes, technically you're correct. It is a deal.
It's a deal, right? So you could lose a game because bad tiles in your turn. But I also think we were playing 4-player games, right? With only had 2 years. If you're playing with less players, which it gives you the 3rd year, and also not only more time to do stuff with that 3rd year, right? But also more chances at the cards because less competition for them. It becomes much less. It won't be a deal in less players.
Well, also, so interesting thing. This was like the Magfest of playing more like old style classic German games.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is that 5 players or 6 players is what everyone's shooting for these days because people have bigger groups. But most of the best German games I can think of, and most games that have stood the test of time, are 4-player games.
Yeah, we played this with like 4 or 5 players.
We played it with 4. It only takes up to 4.
Oh, is it? Okay, I think it's.
That's what I was getting at. Most of the games we played at this Magfest take 4 max.
I think this is best with 2 or 3. I think 4. I think 4 stresses the resources of the game too much, and it makes the digging much more punishing because now you've got the same amount of competition for the same amount of treasure. They don't put in more treasures and more dirt and more player game. It's the same bag, right?
Because this game is a race, it is not highly political, so it does not fall into the 3-player game trap, where a 3-player game is actually a 2-player game plus a safety monkey.
Exactly.
So, yes, I agree. This game is probably a lot better with 3-player.
Just because it'll be more fun. More people will get a chance to go in the bag and get treasures, even though, the scores will be higher. You'll get to do more stuff. Right? It'll just be more enjoyable with more players.
Because the game did feel like it's cut off too short with 4 players.
Yep.
It's kind of like how Bonanza is real fun with 6 and 7, but it's also kind of broken. Bonanza with 5 is ideal and perfect and one of my favorite games.
Right. I think this game is ideal with 3. Even 2, I think this game can be really good.
2 would be real interesting. I haven't played it with 2.
I think 3 is the ideal, but I still think 2 is good. I would prefer 2 to the 4.
Board Game Geek says best with 3 to 4. Which is interesting because I think.
I wonder if there's any special rules for the 2 because we didn't actually play the 2.
Yeah, but
the 3 I think is the sweet spot.
Yeah, there's a big difference between 3 and 4 player. I wouldn't say best with 3 to 4.
Yeah, I think best with 3. And then 4 is kind of like, it's playable, but it's not as good as the 3.
But if you're especially an aspiring game designer, you should play this game for nothing else than to see a game that so perfectly matches theme.
Yeah, the mechanic theme meshing here is so perfect.
Here's another example.
There are so few games that line it up so well.
There is another part of the game. There's a bunch of other parts. We didn't obviously tell you the whole
Like when you play Puerto Rico and you choose craftsman, do you really feel like you're crafting? No, but when you choose to dig and spend 6 weeks digging in Egypt in this game, you feel like you're spending 6 weeks digging in Egypt. And when you go around Europe researching, you feel like you're traveling around Europe researching.
But there's also these exhibitions. So you'll be digging in Egypt, and suddenly you see, there's an exposition going on in London right now. And if you've got the stuff to be able to exhibit there, to loan to their museum, you've got to get your ass back to London, be there before anyone else who also has the right goods, lend your stuff to the museum, and you got to spend 3 weeks at the exposition.
The expo.
Yes, expo. Because I'm doing expeditions.
I think it's actually just exhibit in a museum. It's not an expo. But yeah, there's all kinds of, side things that you can do that are kind of interesting and fun to get more victory points.
And they're all so tight with the theme.
Yep.
But also the mechanic of you spend time going around a board is a very interesting self-tuning mechanic that you could use. It's a lot of old German games had stuff like that. I recall. I started playing a bunch of them again, where even if the game wasn't like super prescriptively designed for balance, they'll have these mechanics where anyone who gets too far ahead, it's not like a traditional rubber band that just sort of pulls you up, but it's more like the more powerful strategies have an intrinsic game cost that sort of causes them to balance out very nicely, even if you didn't think about it too closely.
I think what makes this game such a good thing, if you can find a copy, buy it, right? Because on the one hand, it is a competitive game, though it's not super perfect, amazing competitive, like I say, a Netrunner or something like that, right? But it's competitive enough that someone who likes to play games to win can play this game and think a lot about strategies and make interesting decisions, have a good time. But also, because the theme and the mechanic match so well and the fun of reaching in the bag, that person who usually was only willing to play Cards Against Humanity or maybe Camel Cup, something like that.
It's canonically Camel Up.
Right. Someone who's usually only playing, the easier, more luck-based, not skilled, not, hardcore games like Camel Up. You can get them to play this game because it's so fun to go in the bag and do the things, right? And then you can use this to get both of those people to play the game together and have a good time without that conflict that usually happens. And there's not a lot of games in that sweet spot.
You'll see a neat design pattern. So there's a lot of games where like Alhambra, or games where you can take some number of things, and if you're clever, you can sort of make a combo of the exact values of them. Like Power Grid is an example. Power Grid is a game where you can spend exactly all of your money if you're very clever a lot of the time, and it's a huge advantage if you did so. Like if you set the stage for that play to happen later. This game does that in the sense that if you fall way behind in time, you might be able to look at the board and come up with a combo where you get to take 2 or 3 turns, and then you land directly on top of someone. Exactly. If you land on top of someone on the time thing, top is last place, so you get to take yet another turn.
Yep.
I feel like a heuristic to know who's doing well is who landed on top of another player the most, because that is the person who's doing the Power Grid thing of spending exactly all of their money more than once in the game.
Right, so think about it. You're sitting there looking at the board, and you see a card you really want, right? And there's 3 cards you don't really want so much. So you go and you're in Europe. You're not ready to dig anything yet. So you just go and get the card you really want. You move 2 spaces and take it for 5 turns. Now it's not your turn anymore. But you didn't pay attention. One of those cards you didn't want was on the spot you spawned and only cost 1 week to pick up. Even though it wasn't a great card that you really wanted, you could have gotten that card basically for free. But because you weren't paying attention, you didn't get it, and you just let it sit there. And it's like you could have had 2 cards. Instead, you only got 1 card because you weren't, being careful.
So that is sort of almost a common design pattern, irrespective of the mechanic that causes it, of does the game have a mechanism to reward the player for being exact about something that's difficult to predict or difficult to calculate? Power Grid does it, and this game does it. And I wanted to add a new thing to the way we review board games, because on one of the panels I was on that Scott was not on at MagFest, super smart guy, Luke Peterschmidt at Fun to 11, said something really interesting. Most games, like most tabletop games, like commercial ones, not necessarily the like weirdo German ones we play, but like in general, they pretty much assume that the game's got like 3 to 5 plays tops. And that people really won't play it much beyond that, except maybe bringing it out. Like, games that get past that 3 plays barrier are real close to being classics for all time. If you're talking about games above a certain level of complexity, but below a certain other arbitrary, like there's a lot more. I'm taking this quote kind of out of context. I think this game has 4 to 5 more plays by me before I'm done with it.
I think the number of plays this game has...
Well, but
is entirely dependent on how many friends you have, because it's like you might get tired of digging in that bag, right? You know, and it might lose its excitement a bit. But if you bring some new people in, it can refreshen the excitement, because reaching in that bag is just so awesome.
So thus, the way I would put that is this game has 3 to 5 plays from a purely intellectual, like, I am a gamer playing this game perspective.
And any new person is going to want to play it at least 2 to 3 times.
But it has unlimited play for me, as Scott was alluding to, in that if I'm with some people who have never played this game and I own this game, I'll just bust it out.
It's not going to be, you're not going to bust it out with 2 people who've played it before and 1 who hasn't.
Nope.
But 1 who has played it before and 2 or 3 who haven't, yes, you're going to bust it out, because they're going to have so much fun going in the bag.
Definitely.
And digging into Egypt and finding nothing. Dirt,
Yep.
dirt, dirt. And that's everyone's chanting when you go in the bag. All the other players are like, dirt, dirt, dirt.
At one point,
dirt.
Scott took the bag I was about to dig into and put a curse on it. And sure enough, I drew like 9 fucking dirt.
Curses! King Tut, he got you! King Tut.
So we're going to try to do that in all of our reviews from now on, of really talk about how many plays this game has got in it. Because I feel like that's one thing, that's a metric that we could have used a lot more. We could have used that very effectively in our older game reviews. I'm trying to go back and think about some of those games. Because then, a couple of years down the road, we can go back and say, hey, how many times did we play that game? Was it really 5 players? Or was there some like high-end strategy we didn't think about? Like, did we play it more? Because like T&E right now is one of the, like T&E in Puerto Rico still have Infinity. I'll play those right now.
Netrunner. But there's also games that could have a lot of plays and we just don't for whatever reason. Like, you know, we could play Lost Cities like just whenever.
Yeah.
We just don't.
You know, if we go to Anime Boston, we're going to be playing a lot of Lost Cities, I think.
Good idea.
Yeah, and that Mushroom game, and we're going to bring all the 2-player games.
Netrunner.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of a total aside, but we played some Blast from the Past that we'll talk about later. So I have this old out-of-print game. I don't even know if we ever reviewed it on GeekNights, because I think I bought it before GeekNights.
I think we did.
But
It
La Cheetah,
was a beacon game.
and Scott read the rules again, and I read them again, and then that game's got some stuff going on. I think it needs a second look.
Yeah. I think we did an episode on it.
Scott did not play, but there are 2 games that are kind of famous in our circle, because they're both games that we played a reasonable number of times back in college, but Scott and I are mutually independently undefeated at both of them. I am undefeated at Pizarro, and Scott is undefeated at Web of Power, despite many plays. Someone brought Web of Power. I don't know how he got it.
I've never seen a copy of Pizarro since college.
I know. So I played a game of Web of Power. I won by so much, it wasn't even, like, it was laughable. Like, they were like babies fumbling in the dark in terms of their strategy, despite having played it a bunch relatively recently.
All I remember from I don't remember how to play. I just remember just connect all your guys in a big, long network, and then at the end of the game, put the cylinders out in the best spots.
So, Scott, I hadn't played the game in a long time.
What did you do? Did you do what I just said?
I looked at the board, and I had my usual gut feeling of, here's how I'm going to win this game. But then I stepped back, and I thought long and hard about what you did when you were undefeated. And it was
How do you remember from back then?
I remember things, apparently.
All I remember is make a big network of houses and then put the cylinders out.
So I focused on the network of houses to the exclusion of the things that my heuristics were screaming at me to do.
That's also what I did when I played it.
And you know what?
I made the biggest network of houses I possibly could.
I won real hard, real early.
Now, what happens? I want to know what happens in the game when multiple people are all trying to make the biggest network of houses they possibly can.
So the question is, if we get a hold of this game again, will you play it with me? Because you are legit undefeated at this game, and you played it more than once.
The game I forget how to play, other than I remember making a network of houses.
Yeah, that's most of the game. It's actually a very simple and really quick game. If I ever see it for cheap, I'm gonna get it because I kind of liked it.
Go for it.
All right, we're done. This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not 1, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.
The patrons this week, in order of the amount of money they annoy Scott with, are Nicholas Branda, Rebecca Dunn, John Arnobs II, Amanda Duchette, James David White, Christian Kuntz, Jess, Mechanical Mind, William Eisenrose. You expected the next name to be yours, but it was me, Dio, Clinton Walton, MyStady.com, Phil Ulrich, Ren from New Zealand, Robert Lee, Ryan Perrin, Drew Openlander, Rare Lavelle, Brian Cedrone, Rochelle Montanona, Finn Eric Solverod, Can't Melt Steel Beams. Kinetic Man, Aaron Cerise, Chris Midkiff, Chris Knox, Flame Darkfire, I've thought carefully and I'm still going to pay, Daniel Redmond, Chris Haddad, Sean Klein, Chris Reimer, and Thomas Hahn. At least someone has figured out that one of my favorite jokes in the world is the can't melt steel beams thing. So you know where, I mean, you all know where it comes from. It's that completely fake and stupid, loose change, whatever, 9/11 was a conspiracy thing. But I first encountered it as a joke long ago when someone made this image that was just like, what my 8-year-old cousin thinks all the Pokemon are called. And it shows Pikachu and it's like yellow cat. And it's just like, it's kind of funny and it's going on. And they increasingly make less and less and less sense as you go through this image. And then eventually it's just like jet fuel can't melt steel. For whatever reason, I found this way funnier than I probably should have. And I've just found that one particular joke really, really, really funny every time I encounter it forever. So, I don't know, maybe my brain's broken, but I just find it really funny. And in fact, that joke is the whole reason I made that Ozymandias Twitter account that a lot of you are following now. But anyway, I should keep this brief because as you all know, I'm actually in London right now and the episode's basically recorded well in advance. We will resume the normal Geek Night stuff starting next week. And I think it's either 3 or 3:30 p.m. As I said, we do have that panel, Atari Game Design at PAX East. And while we're probably going to have video of the PAX South version of it up before PAX East even happens, we do it differently every time. This is a panel we can actually get a lot of mileage out of because we can just keep doing different Atari games. So we're basically going to do Outlaw for the first 20-ish minutes of this panel every time we run it, at least until we've milked that cow for all it's worth. But all the other games, we're going to jump around. We might not talk about combat. We might talk about other games. I've been experimenting with maybe some paddle games, maybe some games on the Intellivision to kind of really push it over the line. So, yeah, it'll probably be worth your while to see the panel, even though Scott doesn't seem to think the panel's that good. Despite the fact that people lined up literally hours to see it, it completely filled the not small panel room at PAX. Also, Scott does not listen to these things at the end, so I can pretty much do whatever I want here. And now, thus, I leave you with, it's kind of an oldie and a classic, but pretty sure you're going to laugh when you remember what this is. And if you've never heard it before, well, my hat is off to you guys at Dorkly for making this possible.
Don't deny your fursona, brother. There is a sexy raccoon living inside you. Let him out.
I don't have a fursona, my God.
I was once like you, trying to quell the sexy wolf fox howling in my soul. Let him out so you can feel whole.
Listen, Agumba.
That name has no meaning to me. I am Snowtail, Arctic Fox Wolf.
I'm sorry, a snowtail, but I'm not a furry. I'm not down to yiff. I wear the tanuki suit so I can fly and I can turn to stone.
So, you wear it to get hard?
Yes, exactly. Wait, no, not like that.
Greetings, Snowtail. It is I, a pond hopper, a sexy frogman, and
Luigi?
Oh my God, Mario! I can explain. Please don't tell Mama.